He was no fighter, no star athlete, no one people expected to be remembered. Just a man cleaning floors, doing his job in silence while others looked right past him. But on one ordinary day, everything changed. A challenge was thrown his way, dismissive, almost mocking, and what followed shook everyone watching. Because in the moment he was underestimated, something powerful was revealed. This wasn't just about a fight. It was about dignity, prejudice, and the danger of assumptions. What happened next didn't just surprise the crowd. It forced them to question everything they thought they knew. His name was Marcus. By day, he pushed brooms and carried mop buckets through polished hallways, the kind of work most walked past without a second glance. He didn't wear a title or a badge of honor, just a name stitched onto a faded uniform. Yet beneath that quiet routine was a man of discipline, patience, and strength many never noticed. Every morning he arrived before the sun rose, his footsteps echoing through empty corridors. He worked hard, never asking for applause, never expecting it. But in the eyes of some, he was invisible, just the janitor. They didn't see the years he'd spent studying discipline of his own, the self-control he'd mastered, the respect he practiced daily, and that blindness, those assumptions, were about to invite a challenge. A moment born not from respect, but from ego and doubt. It seemed harmless at first, a so-called test of skill thrown at him like a joke. But what his challenger didn't understand was simple. Marcus was far more than the uniform he wore. The room had been full of chatter that evening. Students sparring, friends laughing, shoes squeaking against the gym floor. It was meant to be a place of discipline, a space where respect guided every move. But not everyone saw it that way. When the black belt's gaze fell on Marcus, the look wasn't one of curiosity, but of casual dismissal, like he was targeting someone he assumed couldn't possibly measure up. "Just the janitor," whispered voices snickered from the side, their laughter carrying sharp edges. Marcus had been cleaning in the corner, unnoticed as always, until now. The challenge came suddenly, tossed out like a dare. Step into the ring with a man who'd trained for years, a man convinced of his superiority. For the black belt, it was amusement. For the bystanders, it was entertainment. But for Marcus, it was something else entirely, an unspoken reminder of the barriers he carried every day. Because Marcus knew this wasn't only about fists. It was about perception. A janitor versus a black belt. A black man viewed as invisible suddenly pulled into focus, but only as the subject of a humiliating spectacle. The crowd expected to watch him falter, maybe even crumble. That assumption burned heavier than any mop bucket he had ever carried. And yet in their eyes, the outcome already seemed decided. The air thickened as he stood there, silent but steady. The trainer smirked, the students buzzed, the crowd leaned forward. Marcus's uniform wasn't a GI. It was work clothes stained with sweat and cleaning fluid. He wasn't supposed to belong in this ring. He wasn't supposed to be more than a backdrop in someone else's story. And that's exactly why no one saw what was coming. As he stepped forward, whispers turned into murmurs. Doubt, laughter, pity, it all blended into the same dismissive noise. They didn't see the discipline written in his posture. They didn't know the countless nights he had trained on his own, long after shifts ended. They didn't recognize the controlled power behind every careful breath he took in that moment. The black belt bowed, or maybe mocked, and lunged, confident, casual, almost careless. And with that single move, the entire gym seemed to hold its breath. Marcus tightened his stance, heart steady, eyes sharp. He knew that every second ahead of him was more than a fight. It was a stage. And on that stage lay the chance to shatter not just one man's arrogance, but the very narrative that had always boxed him into the shadows. And then, as the first strike flew toward him, the truth began to surface, one that no one in that gym was ready to face. The first strike came hard, a blur of confidence and arrogance hurtling toward Marcus. Gasps rippled from the crowd, already imagining the janitor crumpling under the weight of a trained black belt. But in that instant, something unbelievable happened. Marcus didn't flinch. He moved with precision, calm, controlled, almost surgical, as if years of restraint had been waiting for this exact test. The black belt swung again, faster, sharper, but Marcus absorbed the energy, redirecting it with quiet strength. Each motion revealed a truth no one in that room wanted to face. Skill, discipline, and dignity do not wear uniforms. The air was no longer filled with laughter, but with stunned silence. For Marcus, every glance, every smirk, every whispered, "just a janitor," echoed in his memory with each block, each counter. This was not simply a spar, it was the collision of stereotypes and reality, of arrogance against humanity. What everyone expected to be a lesson in humiliation became something far greater, a mirror held up to prejudice itself. By the third exchange, the black belt's confidence cracked. His strikes grew desperate, his balance faltered. And yet Marcus never lashed out in anger. His movements were deliberate, restrained, a demonstration that true strength doesn't bully, it commands respect. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, some wide-eyed with shock, others suddenly quiet, ashamed of what they had assumed. Then, one slip. One opening. Marcus stepped forward, gently but decisively ending the match. No flourish, no celebration, just power held in absolute control. The black belt stood, red-faced, humbled. The crowd, once ready for a joke at Marcus's expense, now stood frozen, their stereotypes shattered. Because in that moment, they weren't staring at a janitor anymore. They were staring at truth. The gym eventually emptied, but the silence lingered in every corner. Marcus picked up his mop again, the same way he had 1,000 times before. Yet something was different now. The whispers had stopped. The laughter had vanished. Those who once dismissed him as just the janitor struggled to meet his eyes. And while he hadn't sought applause, respect had finally walked into the room. Respect born not from victory, but from truth revealed under pressure. Still, the weight of the moment pressed on him. Because Marcus knew this wasn't only about him. For every crowd that had watched him and been forced to see his worth, there were countless others still looking past people like him, choosing the bias, the stereotype, the easy dismissal. His story was one spark against a darkness that stretched far beyond the walls of that gym. Racism survives not only in loud hatred but in quiet assumptions, in the way someone is ignored, underestimated, or excluded before a word is even spoken. What happened that night was more than a fight. It was a reminder that prejudice blinds even the educated, even the disciplined, even those who believe they judge with fairness. Marcus walked away with no medals, no headlines. But those who saw him that day would never forget the lesson written in his every movement. That dignity cannot be mopped away, that skill and humanity do not bow to stereotypes. And so the question remains, how many more Marcuses must rise from the shadows before the world finally sees them clearly?